Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. Well, Quinny, what a Six Nations it was. Matt as well with me again. Alan, fourth Grand Slam Ireland in Dublin. What an achievement. What a remarkable 6 to 8 weeks. But fair play to them. It was just a great day, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a special day, I think. And it's only our fourth Grand Slam. So a lot of excitement. Build up coming into Paddy's weekend, party atmosphere, and by their own admission, we didn't get a perfect performance from Ireland, but credit to England. I think I can't say my predictions throughout the championship were spot on, but I did fancy England to come and upset Ireland a little bit. I still think they have a bit to go in their attack game, and they've issues around that, but. On paper, a very strong team who weren't going to come and lie down for Ireland and allow that party to kick into full motion after 10 or 15 minutes of the game. So they certainly played their part. Ireland will learn a little bit from this again, and other teams will look and see, what kind of pressure that's required to put under a team that's very comfortable in attack, right across the board. Their handling of the forwards and backs alike. It's very cohesive, and they've been superb. And we go right back to the first game against Wales. That's where it all started. I think that was an absolutely fantastic first half performance where they blew Wales away. So, yeah, they deserve a lot of credit. I think it's a wonderful achievement, and I think they deserve it. France are probably there's nothing between France and Ireland. Even, Ireland won at home. But if Ireland go to France, I think it was you that said it to me, Stuart, if Ireland play that game in France when we did the podcast after that one, is it a different result? And it possibly is. I think Ireland will have learned a lot from, France will have learned a lot from that themselves. And but, Ireland had to deal with players missing throughout the championship, and they coped very well. So wonderful achievement and a very special day for Irish rugby.
Matt, just your take on it. What a special day it was, as Alan said. But, got to win 5 matches to win that Grand Slam. And Ireland just delivered throughout the tournament, didn't they?
That's why Grand Slams are so rare, Stu, isn't it? It's very, very difficult to win a Grand Slam. Very, very, and like Ireland faced such adversity at times. Look at Edinburgh. Each team that wins a Grand Slam has a game that they get away with. Our last Grand Slam, you think Johnny did that magnificent drop goal in Paris in the dying seconds to win that game. There is always a game that they've got to deal with. And Ireland, across that whole tournament, dealt with all the adversity, all the difficulties, but played some magnificent rugby. The French game, the first half of the French game was as good a half of rugby as I've ever seen. It was absolutely superb rugby from both, and it takes two teams to tango like that. France were brilliant, but it all built up to Saturday. And being in Dublin, I got to say that I was in the really privileged position of being on the sideline. And when the national anthems were on, wow, the hair on the back of your neck was standing on end. It was unbelievable being that close to it and feeling it. It was superb, and the crowd. The Aviva gets a bad rap at times, and I do agree with it. Sometimes the crowd's quiet and there's too many people walking around buying pints, and all that's true. But I tell you, on Saturday, the people really delivered for the team. The support from the crowd for the players was astonishing, and you could see the players' nervousness in how they played. I don't remember Tyke Furlong throwing a bad pass. I think he threw 3. I don't remember him ever for Leinster or Ireland doing bad passes like that. His handling is superb. And I think that's a reflection on the stress and tension that was in the side. They knew that history was beckoning, but they'll be better for that. They'll be better for that experience when going into the World Cup. Alan said the other part, they got depth. Tom O'Toole came on there. At the beginning of that tournament, if we said, listen, Tom O'Toole's going to be playing at tight head against for part of the game, a significant part of the game against England for a Grand Slam, we'd go, oh, wow, I'm a bit nervous about that. Tom O'Toole's just grown and developed in this phenomenal way, as have so many other players. Ross Burns cemented his place in there. The fact that we have such depth in the second row, Ryan Baird coming on, was again magnificent. All these other players that got their opportunity all delivered. Every one of them delivered. And now we have this depth in position going into a World Cup. We've got confidence from the way we played, not just talk. This is evidence. We've got evidence that these guys can play. So it's just been a magnificent achievement, but also a wonderful, the best preparation you could possibly get, or Ireland could possibly get for the World Cup. All of this has fallen into play, and everyone involved, coaches and players and management, all deserve whatever credit and praise we can give them, because it's been a magnificent performance.
Alan, Matt talks about depth. 47, 48 players have been in the camp. Andy Farrell straight in the press conference was saying, there's so much more in this team. So, they're just going to keep building and building into this World Cup, aren't they?
Well, you would hope so. It's going to be difficult because there's a real target on their back, and there has been coming into the Six Nations. I think that's probably the most pleasing thing, the way they've been able to deal with the pressure. Going to Cardiff the first day, the Warren Gatland effect, it was mentioned a lot. The pressure that they've dealt with has been very, very, very good. The way they've been able to cope, stick to their own kind of structures and plan. And there's a lot of momentum to be gained from that. So, 2019 it will be mentioned for a while, probably, up to this point now, and depending what happens at the World Cup, it may be forgotten about if Ireland do well at the World Cup. But they've been really superb in their application. They've had issues with injuries. Finlay Bealham has been a big winner. Ryan Baird at the weekend, Tom O'Toole, Stuart McAvoy, and Tom O'Toole, I think, obviously having to come off the bench a number of times, looking comfortable. They've had issues around the injuries as well with what happened in Murrayfield, but it was a blistering start. And I think getting that first away win is really important. And I think that was kind of the cornerstone for success, and it laid down a platform. It made them, there was so much pressure going into that game because some of those players were there in 2019 when England, beat Ireland in that first game in after a brilliant 2018. So, yeah, they're mentally in a good place. I think they seem like they have a happy camp, but they have big challenges ahead. And I think that's probably the key for this team now, not to rest on their laurels and think that their game is in great shape now, and it's just going to happen at the World Cup. They've got to find different ways now and improve. I think one area would be, there was a fair few missed tackles in this championship. Ireland were in the 20s on a few occasions, and that would be concerning. They're kind of a team that if someone scores against them, they dust themselves down and go up the field. But I think the scramble defence has been superb. So they've conceded the fewest tries in the championship. So there's not a problem with defence. I just think it's an area that they could become better at when Andy Farrell talks about it. I think their kicking game could be a little bit sharper for definite. These are things that, and Matt will know as a coach, that you continuously have to work on. Their breakdown at the weekend wasn't where we've seen it. So they probably need to figure out if that happens again, how do they kick a little bit more and find space in the backfield when you have 13, 14 players up in that front line, like England had at the weekend. So there's areas they can get better. Any team that's winning, and that's the key to success with sporting teams, that you don't kind of rest and think that you've got to a level that's going to work, because so many other teams will get better, Stuart. They will improve, and a lot of these teams who, didn't maybe hit the ground running in the Six Nations will, they'll try and peak and get it right at the World Cup, and one or two players, one or two changes in their structures and the other international teams can make them very dangerous as well. So the recovery and the plan over the summer is going to be really important, how they get the balance right between conditioning. I do believe that fitness is going to play a big part in this World Cup, tempo and pace to games. We know South Africa won a World Cup the last time, and there's no doubt that, and this isn't being disrespectful at all in any way to South Africa, that they can totally outmuscle you because they have that power. Their scrum, their set piece is really powerful. Their line-out maul and their kicking game is really good. They have magical players in that back line as well who can attack and they can score tries when they want. But I think this World Cup, there's going to be attack is probably going to be the one that you get the biggest benefits from by having that attacking game, and part of that is being really fit and your movements on the ground and your shape. So of course they can get better, but they've been superb. So it's only marginal gains that I would think they're looking for. Obviously, you got to try and maintain what you've got and what they've shown the last 12 months, and then try and find different ways of tweaking them. You can always find different strike plays off set pieces and things like that. So yeah, it's the right attitude to have for sure. But I think they need to park it now. They're all back to their provinces, rest, enjoy it, and that'll be a different situation from when it comes around.
Matt, we must touch on Johnny Sexton. Some of the greats don't get the send-off they deserved. But what about a Six Nations final game? Everything seemed to go right for him, and his celebrations at the end, they were just great for him and for his family. Just a legend of Irish rugby. Not finished yet, but in Six Nations terms, and even that final conversion, that sums them all up.
Yeah, he was great. It was a very special moment. And I think it sums up Johnny. As he's coming off, 60,000 people are on their feet applauding him, and applauding him for everything he's done for Irish rugby, for his leadership, standards he's set, his longevity, the way he's played, the success he's had. And he is not hearing, I'm sure he's hearing it, but he's not acknowledging it. He's got the grumpy head on because he doesn't want to come off. I was right in front of him as he came. He didn't look up once and wave or, thanks a lot. It was nothing. There wasn't one acknowledgement. All he's doing, and we found the word is he's talking to the medical staff because he's hurt his leg. Will I be back for Leinster? Will I be back on it? I want to come off. I think I could do it. Instead of saying, it's a 70-minute, you've just won a Grand Slam, enjoy it. But it was great, great to see him afterwards with his kids and doing the lap and smiling. Because probably we haven't seen Johnny smile enough on his journey. He's so dedicated and so intense. That smile has probably been missing on far too many occasions because of his drive to succeed. And Stewie, we've got to say, we said it, Alan and I said it the other day on TV with Virgin Media. He stood on O'Driscoll's shoulders. So Brian O'Driscoll's dragged Irish rugby with Paul O'Connell up to a point. And what Johnny's done is he stood on their shoulders, on Paul and Brian's shoulders, and pulled it on again, brought Irish rugby up again. He's demanded standards from the players. He's demanded standards from himself and everyone around him about training, preparation, and performance. And so much of what Ireland and done, and Leinster, is about his standards and his demands as a captain. Sometimes that comes out with a grumpy hat on, but that's him. He wears his heart in his sleeve. He's passionate, and he loves what he's doing. And we've been so fortunate over the 20 years. To say you've had O'Driscoll, O'Connell, O'Gara, and Sexton, that this whole generation has seen those. That's true gift to everyone that's watched the game, because you don't often get all-time greats like that in one period. These guys are the equivalent of Michael Jordan in rugby terms. These are guys that are going to be remembered forever. That the game, as long as the game is played, these are guys that are going to be remembered, and we've seen them all, and that's a true pleasure.
Yeah, it certainly is. Alan, I suppose we must touch on player of the tournament, which is going to be announced on Friday. 3 Irishmen, 3 Frenchmen, Caelan Doris, Hugo Keenan. Who else have we got there? We've got Thomas Ramos, Damien Penaud, Anton Dupont, and finally Mac Hansen. 6 quality players, to say the obvious. Which way are we going, or what do you make of that? In total, the 6 that are nominated, plenty left out. Andrew Porter, name one. I'm sure there's plenty others you can think of, but what do you think on Friday? Which way will it go?
it's hard to know. I think it's hard to, and it's also hard to kind of go against Dupont. He won it in 2020 and 22. He's just an extraordinary player. And all the way through this tournament, he's coming up with big moments. His involvements are continuously unbelievably positive. Even in their loss to Ireland in Dublin, he was the one continuously making line breaks, bringing other players into the game, keeping France in the game. The game wasn't secure, I suppose, until Gary Ringrose gets that try late on. It was a wonderful game, as Matt said. Everybody has lauded that game for the quality of rugby, the attack, and the excitement throughout. He was phenomenal in England, in Twickenham, and again at the weekend against Wales. The pass for Damien Penaud, the support play. So it's very, very difficult, even though they haven't won the tournament, to go against Dupont, because I just think his contributions are freakish at times. It's just hard to believe that this guy can come up with this kind of excitement and quality so often. If you look at, Penaud has obviously finished and scored a lot of tries in the tournament, and Ramos has been really good as well. And if you look at the Irish players, then, Mac Hansen, Keenan and Doris, high level throughout the whole tournament. So I think they're might be slightly behind Dupont. If you're picking, and it doesn't, player of the tournament doesn't have to necessarily come from the team that won the championship. I'd love if it was one of the Irish guys. I think all three, in Hansen, Doris and Keenan, have been absolutely fantastic. They've been so good in every game they've played. Saturday, even the first half, again, Hugo Keenan, sublime. So Doris went off against Scotland early, but early in the championship he was sensational. He was unplayable. So they've been brilliant. And Hansen, just the quality and the continuous, him as a ball player, he's just a wonderful footballer. So I don't know. I'm just making the point that it's really difficult not to give it to Dupont. It might sway towards some of the Irish. One of the Irish guys, it's hard to even separate them. So, it's a really difficult one. But I don't know what you think, Matt. I just think some of the stuff that Dupont has done in this tournament, again, he just keeps going and going and going.
He's unbelievable.
The next 10 years, he's going to win everything. So I think you've just given us your answer.
Yeah, they should, just go to the engraver and get a bulk deal and just engrave his name on it for the next 10 years. As Stewie, we were saying, it's like the under 8s where you've got a big kid who's just big and everyone dominates the game. Like this is the international game, and Dupont is just doing things that are you just look at it and go, how does he do that? Like that, and no greater example than when Mac Hansen looks like he's going to score a try in that corner at the Aviva, the right-hand corner at the Aviva, or left-hand corner, sorry, the Aviva, as we look at it, the Havelock end. And he's this little guy, Dupont, and he has this incredible strength, and he literally holds Mac Hansen up, like in a wrong hold, like a reverse bear hug, and pulls him backwards, where Mac is a strong guy himself, had all the opportunity. I don't know if you saw the shots of him swapping jerseys there the other day at Stade de France. He took his jersey off to swap. And mate, the physique on the guy is just staggering. Like he's like a bodybuilder. Like if he's like a mini WWE guy, he's just this wrestler's physique on him. He can kick both feet, like against England at Twickenham. He chips over the top of the outside of his right foot, regathers, runs another 15 metres, then kicks off the toe of his left foot on the run, and the ball stops 10 centimetres from the English try line. Well, there's nothing the guy can't do. He steps to his right at one stage against England, so the whole England attack goes right, comes back onto his left, does a 50-22. France get the line out in the corner, ultimately score off that line out. Like, it's not fair what he's doing. And I agree with Alan. In the game against Ireland, how could you not give man of the match to Doris? How could you not give it to Dupont? There was just, if you gave it to Dupont, you say, well, why wouldn't you give it to Doris? And if you gave it to Doris, you say, why didn't you give it to Dupont? Every game, the guy is just phenomenal. I think there is one thing that the people that are or the committee that are nominating, World Player of the Year and Six Nations, they've got to start looking at the tight five. I think this is really wrong. They're not recognising the excellence of tight five play. Now the tight five aren't going to score and be in the open like the back three and the back row are, but there has been such good excellence from our tight five across all teams. But we've got to recognise that and recognise that it's going to be different. Like how Andrew Porter needs to be in that group. He has been staggering. I just don't believe Ireland win the Six Nations without Andrew Porter's contribution to the win, to the performances. But we've got to recognise that the tight five are not going to be doing those things that we're seeing Dupont and these guys do. So sure, we should put Dupont up, and I believe he should win it. But we've got to be recognising our tight five. Otherwise, we're really neglecting aspects of our game that need to be rewarded. And when you get a tight five player like Porter, who has put in the performance that Porter's put in, he deserves to be in that group. And I think that's an injustice for him. But you couldn't argue with any of these guys getting it, except Dupont is ridiculously in front of everyone. And that's what a joy for Fabien Galthié, and what a joy for us all to see. I text a couple of guys who I respect about Dupont, and I said, "Is this guy the best I've seen? Am I wrong?" And they came back with a list of other great nines, and you'd have to say that along with Gareth Edwards and Juice Van Westhuizen and you got to go back to David Kirk, who lifted the first World Cup, Gregan, Nick Farr-Jones. Even Faf de Klerk, who's playing at the moment. Dupont is in the conversation of the best nine that's ever been. But Bezier, all these guys. He's at the beginning of his career, but he's already in that conversation of an all-time great.
Alan, if we look at the tournament as a whole, Ireland obviously winning and then France underneath them, and the other teams, Scotland, England, Italy and Wales, all of their different stories and how they've performed throughout the last 8 weeks. But where do you see everyone at the moment? It's a pretty big question, but both of you is actually, Matt as well included. Where do you see everyone going into this World Cup in September, October?
It's like I said there at the start. You can't write teams off and think, oh God, because they've had a bad Six Nations. I think, for England and Steve Borthwick, he came out after the first game and said we're not good at anything. It was a hell of a statement for a head coach. It was a very honest appraisal. It was probably a little strong, in my opinion, that you would want your head coach coming out with. I think they're very good players, England. I think they have a new coaching team. It's going to take time. Nick Evans is probably the key to their attack. It's Kevin Sinfield's obviously an incredibly inspirational rugby league player, and he was with Leicester. Borthwick brought him with him. It's going to take a little bit of time for them. We saw evidence on Saturday of a little foundation that they can build on, because for any team, you want to be strong. You want to be hard to beat first and foremost. You want to be strong defensively, and you want to have the fundamentals of the game right, your set piece, your breakdown work, all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure England will be good at all that stuff come the World Cup. It's just the intrigue of whether they can, add some layers to their attack. And I don't know what you think, Matt. I just think that England will have the ability to pick very good players, skillful players. The issue they have, I suppose, is who's playing number 10. Are they going to go with Owen Farrell? Are going to move him to the centre, play Marcus Smith? I don't know. But I saw... In summary, I think England are going to be stronger. They're going to be dangerous. They're on their easiest side of the group. Australia, who Matt knows well, I think they're a real threat. We saw them in November against Ireland, and the performance they put in Paris against France. That was a little reminder that if they get their tails up, get all their injured players ready and prepared for the World Cup, will Eddie Jones kind of give them a bounce? I'm sure he'll make them bring a bit of steel to them. I hope he doesn't stifle their attack play and have them kicking the leather off the ball. I'm not saying he will. He look at what he's got, and there's a natural ability there to play brilliant rugby. I think, and Matt will probably agree with this, Australia's biggest issue at times is the set piece, the scrum, the line out, getting their maul rumbling, things like that. Scotland, of course, are in Ireland's group. They're going to be very, very dangerous, and they can be pretty pleased. I think they'll be probably a little bit mixture of relief and happiness at the final whistle on Saturday, because right at the end of the game they could have conceded a try and lost that game, which would have been disastrous for them. But certainly what they did early on the tournament against England, Wales, and the performance in Paris was really good. I think they'd be a handful for any team on their day. For Wales, I think they got their best performance and probably most cohesive performance in Paris, which is, they still lost the game by 13 points in the end and conceded 41. They have issues and they have problems. I think it's for Warren Gatland is getting the balance right between young and old. He chopped and changed a fair bit, made a lot of changes throughout the tournament. It's not for me to tell him he's right or wrong. He'll know. But you still could not discount Wales from getting a team and a squad together that can cause problems, particularly on that side of the group. And Italy, of course, they'll be a handful if they can build on what we've seen. It was very pleasing to see the Italians play some brilliant attacking rugby throughout the tournament. They didn't get that win. They ran Ireland close. They ran Scotland very, very close, and France right in that first game. So there's not a lot between the top teams. And I think that's where Ireland, going back to what we were originally saying, if they stay still, there's any number that could get to their level, or at least get to their level or surpass them. So that's the challenge. But it's much better to have an Irish situation than some of the other teams. They're more hopeful of getting things right. Ireland are at a pretty advanced stage in their preparations, and they're in a good place.
Matt, do you want to pick up on that? I know you've been pretty harsh on England over the last couple of matches, but against Ireland, they were much better. Did you see signs there that going into a World Cup that there is a bit of hope? Who else tickled your fancy, Matt, over the next couple of months?
I think Ireland had to be better on Saturday, Stu, because they couldn't get any worse than they were against France. That's up there with the worst.
England, you should say.
Sorry, excuse me, England.
You get lynched in, massively.
No. I've got enough money in the bank.
Purpose, he definitely doesn't.
Money in the bank, they'll forgive me. England, the worst English performance I've seen since Clive Woodward took over in '97, and he brought a team to Australia and they got walloped by Australia. They were appalling. 6 years later, they win a World Cup, right? So where England are now at the beginning of a journey, I don't think they're going to be much as in winning this World Cup coming is beyond them. They've got huge problems in attack. They haven't got any structure around their players, like compared to Ireland or New Zealand or France that have got a system around their quality players. Their system needs a complete overhaul and a lot of learning from their players to learn a system. So they're going to the line with very few players. The other thing that Ireland picked in defence, tackle one, so there's a scrum, tackle one, 4 English forwards went around the ruck and no backs came back. So they had the vast majority of their defenders on the open side. So what did Ireland do? Ireland was like a jab. They went 1-2 and then came back blindside. They did it all night. 1-2, come back blind. 1-2, come back blind. And the English players kept folding on the 1 and the 2. So at times they were coming back, and Jamie George was on the wing. And that was the same against France. France ripped them apart on the short side every time. So they've got to fix that. So they got systemic problems. I also think they've got problems in their halves. I think their nines, all the nines I'm seeing are not at the races. None of them would make the international teams, other international teams, in the top 5. So they got huge problems. They got quality 10s, but they can't figure out which one's which. And Marcus Smith has been the scapegoat in the whole process. So I think they got huge problems. And I am delighted because they are on Australia's side of the draw. So this is going to be the problem at the World Cup. The Australian and English side, Australia and Wales in one pool, England and Argentina in the other. Like, that's a great path to the semi-finals for the Wallabies. Because I agree with Quinny. Australian rugby is getting off the canvas. It was almost dead during during COVID. It's off the canvas now. It's back on its feet and it's swinging. If they get everyone in and fit, which is they haven't been able to do for a number of years, but if they get everyone fit, Eddie Jones is, let's forget, he's the best World Cup coach in the history of the World Cup. He will get them firing in some shape for that World Cup. On the other side, Ireland, this is the difficulty of the draw. Ireland, France, same pool. England, South Africa and New Zealand on the same side of the pool. I mean, that is so hard compared to the other side. So it's Ireland have got a mountain to climb in that way. And the other part, to me, France at home, wow, they're going to be tough. France scare me. France are the only team that I look at and go, I don't want them. I want to dodge them until as late as possible. You don't want to be getting France in a knockout stage early, quarters. Whatever you can do, avoid them. Now, Ireland look like that, they don't have to face that dilemma. But somewhere along the line, they're going to hit France. I can see a France-Ireland final, but you could also make an argument for France and other people there. But they're not going to be far. Ireland are not going to be far away. But France at home, I don't want them.
I think that's something I didn't mention about France. I brought Australia into this when we were probably just maybe just looking at the Northern Hemisphere teams, but France are the favourites for this tournament. They're going to be so difficult to beat over there. And Dupont, you take Dupont out of that French team, they're a different team. He's that good. Yeah. Now they've so many top-class players themselves, France, and athletically, they're so powerful. They're much fitter. Sean Edwards has done a great job. Ibanez and Galtier, I think they've really changed the work rate and the work ethic of this group of French players in the last couple of seasons. So they're going to be an incredible handful for anybody on home soil. There's a bit of pressure with that, having to be favourites for sure, and it'll be interesting how they deal with that. South Africa then are so I actually don't think Ireland are favourites for this World Cup. They shouldn't be. No, I think it should be France, South Africa, and probably Ireland third. South Africa are going to be, they're what Rassie Erasmus and Jack Nienaber have done. You can be rest assured that they'll be working overtime to get all their little, all the preparation right. We saw what they did in Japan in 2019. They were the first team in Japan. They were probably there 7 or 8 weeks. They had so much detail around everything they were doing, and they got it right. They found that really peak performance in the final, which they needed. So they're going to be really, really hard to beat as well. So number of teams can win it. I don't think England will win it. I think Australia are a better shout than England on that side of the draw. Argentina could surprise a few people, They always seem to bring that passion and that intensity as well. So it's stating the obvious. There's a number of teams can win the tournament, and but for me, France are number one, South Africa 2, and they're the teams to beat, really. New Zealand, of course, I never mentioned them, but
and Scott Robertson, was just announced this morning as the coach.
Yeah,
there you go. You haven't even mentioned them. Yeah, so
they're always going to be a handful, and they're probably gone through a transitional period in the last year or two, but they can still, on their day, if the All Blacks get going, they can wallop anybody. You certainly wouldn't underestimate them in any way. So they'll be very, very dangerous as well. And the Rugby Championship this year is a shorter version of it. They all play each other once, so they've only 3 games in July. It's finished at the end of July, and then it's August. It'll be pre-season stuff and for them and trying to get it right for that tournament in September.
Well, I suppose we're only 6 months out, so I better get the predictions of where Ireland are going to end up in this World Cup. Alan, straight to you.
It's impossible, Stuart.
Yeah.
I just think you can't. It just depends who's fit.
Will they get past the quarterfinal?
Again, I don't know, and I'm being honest. There's no point in me saying yes, because they're going to play. If they get out of the group, they're playing France or New Zealand, and on the day, we need to see what form both teams are in, where France are at. And where New Zealand are at, and then you can make a kind of balanced judgment on it. I think, have they the mental strength and the capabilities of going past the quarterfinal? From what we've seen now, yes, but I know they coped. I coped well in this championship with some players missing, some quality out, but you need to see Ireland in a quarterfinal. If they get there, I keep saying it because, Scotland will have a say in this group. And we saw what happened in the last World Cup and previous World Cups where we ended up being disappointed. You need to see an Ireland bench full of quality. And that is going to be the key for me. You need to see British and Irish lines, guys with 60, 70, 80 caps on the Irish bench, chomping at the bit, and really coming off that bench. South Africa's bomb squad were so highlighted so much in the last World Cup, but I think it will make a difference because it's going to be a real dogfight for Ireland. But all I can say is yes, they're capable of getting past the quarterfinal, and if they're in good shape, and playing well, and get some momentum, and that's going to be. Depending on, the South Africa, they played Romania, Tonga, South Africa and Scotland. So after the group stages, if they have their key players available, yes, they'll be in a really good position. But it's a flick of a coin at this stage, Stuart.
And a final word to you on this, Matt, on the World Cup coming up? Yeah,
look, I think Quinny's 100%, mate. That side of the pool, Ireland side of the pool, like anyone that predicts that it tells you that's the truth. It's a lie, because the quality of the teams on Ireland's side of the pool is just so high. They are. And
Matt, imagine people saying we'd probably rather play the All Blacks. I can tell you where you're at.
Yeah.
Like, when would you rather play the All Blacks over somebody else? Like, it's crazy.
Never.
It's crazy,
Yeah, it is. And look, I do think this particular World Cup cycle, New Zealand aren't as strong as we've seen them in the past. I think the appointment of Scott Robinson, who is a great bloke. Scott Robinson, I coached against Scotty 25 years ago, and I've been very privileged to attend training when he was meeting at the Canterbury. He is a great person, and he will do a phenomenal job for New Zealand. So you don't want to get New Zealand at the next World Cup, because Scotty will have them in great shape. This World Cup, they're still a great side. Anyone who tells New Zealand's not good, like, that's rubbish. They're still a great side. So the difficulty Ireland face is they've got all these great teams. Now, the plus is Ireland aren't going to go into this with fear, because they've beaten them all. They've beaten all these guys. That is a huge psychological bonus. They're going in with momentum, and each game is going to be a battle. There's no two ways about that. But they have got belief based on performance, not hope, belief based on performance. So this is the best shot Ireland have ever had. But they can still go out at the quarterfinals. There's no two ways about that, because of the quality of the opposition. Here's the other part. That makes wonderful, wonderful entertainment. Like, this is going to be so exciting. We're fortunate we're going to be showing it. But it is going to be exciting, but unpredictable. The other side, mate, that's a much easier one to predict, isn't it? What the Wales, England, Australia, Argentina, that they're going to finish top of their pool. So that's a much easier path for Australia or England. And I agree with Quinny. Everyone's forgotten Argentina. They've beaten South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and England in the last 10 months. So if you write the Pumas off, you're mad. Michael Cheika is going to have them. They've just had a camp in Paris, so they're going to be a really difficult team to beat. And they're playing some good rugby. So again, great World Cup, but this is Ireland's best preparation ever for a World Cup. They've got a great shot at it. but there's no guarantees, unfortunately.
There are no guarantees, but Grand Slam winners, what a period of time it's been for Ireland going into the World Cup. It's so exciting. Of course, we have the World Cup in Virgin Media in September, October. Lads, been an absolute pleasure.
We forgot to mention the 20s as well, Stuart.
Yes,
I know you're rapping. The 20s were brilliant as well. So
Yeah,
that was really, really fantastic that they won as well.
Back-to-back Grand Slams. Richie Murphy's doing some job. Alan, Matt, thanks as always, and we'll chat to you in a couple of months.
Thanks, man.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.